So I'd lay the cardboard box down and I'd take my shoes off and I'd put them behind on the thing as my pillow, and I'd sit down and I'd go, thank you, God. And I'd laugh to myself, and maybe he was laughing with me, because I'd say, thank you for this luxurious place you've given me to, you know what I mean, kick back. I've got city views, this and that, fresh breeze, blah, blah. And I'd learned to be thankful for the fact that I have a cardboard box and a blanket, you know what I mean? I can't hate my life and I can't regret my life, because all the horror that I went through for 20 years, it now makes me the man I am today. And it's a man that's in love with Jesus, brother, and that's got a message of hope.
So thank you so much for coming in today to film your testimony. We'd just love to get a bit of an intro on who you are, where you're from, what you do.
So my name's Simon, but people call me Simmo. I have a running joke that the only people call me Simon are my mum, coppers and prison guards. But so you can call me Simmo. I'm 43 years old. I'm married in February. I've got a baby on the way. I work for New Heart Baptist Church. Been with them for a few years now, nearly 5 years. Did a 2-year internship with them. Also completing my bachelor's degree in ministry. I've done my diploma. Still involved with Fishers of Men ministry, helping guys get off the street, get off the drugs, that type of stuff, and find Jesus, deliver from demons, all that type of stuff. So that's me at the moment. And now I'm operating a missional cafe out of our Balmoral campus. Yeah, it's just, I guess, to make space for God to work, to have the church doors open 7 days a week. When the whole community come and grab a coffee and just say, what are you guys about? Yeah, hopefully to meet Jesus.
So tell us what life was like for you growing up. Was there any Jesus in your life? What did you believe? What was your childhood really like? Talk us through that.
I was born in London, actually. So I came from a family, my father's Iranian, Persian. So he was over in London. That was back when Iran had a king, and then the Ayatollahs came and took over and made it an Islamic state. And my dad was in London at the time, and he met my mum, and they got married, this and that, and then had me and my younger sister. My mum's family immigrated to Australia, so I came over with my parents, got here when I was 2 years old, and grew up in Sydney. And there was a lot of conflict in the house, I guess, And my dad was I say he's from a different, he was from a different planet, right? So Iran was different, not just a different country, bro, different culture, different people, different values, different understandings, different God as well, bro, And my mum, she was English, she came from Roman Catholic background as well. And she was actually religious, yeah? She had faith, man, eh? One of my earliest memories is, my dad coming home. I was sitting in the high chair getting fed, and my dad burst in the door swearing, rah, and maybe I was 1 or something. I think the next earliest memory was my grandma putting me in the car in the booster seat, and my dad was coming out screaming, rah, 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 and I was crying. I remember I was crying, and I remember him slapping me in the face. And my grandma saying, he won't stop crying if you smack him in the face, this and that. I remember another one was my parents arguing over where they wanted to send me to school. So mum was a Catholic, right? And dad Muslim, so he wanted me to go to public school. Mum wanted me to go to Catholic school, right? So they were arguing, da. But anyway, so I went to Catholic school, primary school and high school. But when I was in primary school, my mum, she got sick. She was driving home from work, and she got she started flashing lights or whatever. So she went to the hospital, and so she got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, MS, yeah. And I remember sitting there in the hospital room with my dad, and I think it was a Friday night or something, and I go, oi. And I just remember waiting there, and I go, Dad, I want to go. I've got to go to my friend's house. And he's like, man, your mum, you idiot. She's just been diagnosed with this horrible thing. Anyway, she got diagnosed with MS. I think your immune system attacks your nervous system, right? So they give you these drugs to knock out your immune system. But then so it gets worse. So she diagnosed, and then a few years later she was in a wheelchair. You know what I mean? So that didn't make stuff real easy in the house, and so I wasn't real somewhere I wanted to be. And my dad. And mum, I told you she's from England, so she had this, the stiff upper lip, you don't talk about your dramas and this type of stuff. And dad's from the Middle East, there's none of not a lot of input there and nurturing. And, you know, I look at dads today, and I made a decision with my son that I'll never be the dad my dad was to me, you know. So I tell my boy how proud I am of him and how I love him all the time, you know. So I go to my mate's house in primary school, and I go to his house, and then, you know, his parents would leave us at home and then go across the road to the pub and get pissed, and his brother's smoking dope, 16-year-old, you know, getting girls pregnant and all that type of stuff. So left to our own devices. So I told you my dad's from Iran, and the Ayatollahs took over, right? So there was a lot of refugees and that type of stuff from the country. And, you know, Persians stick together, like, you know, all the ethnicities down in Sydney, you get your pockets. So we get all these Iranians coming visiting us at the house all day, every day, and they all come, walk in, 3-4 guys at a time, come in and sit down with my dad, drinking tea and smoking cigarettes, and they're all showing my dad respect and this type of stuff. And I remember sitting there watching them, and I'm not getting this from my dad, right? So I see these guys paying respect to my father, and I'm like, well, that's what it's like. It's all about respect, you know? And from very early on in my life, I never wanted to be an astronaut or a copper or a doctor or nothing like that. But my dad used to watch the movies, The Godfather and that type of stuff, and the gangster stuff, you know? And it was always about respect. And so he asked me what I wanted to be when I was a kid. I wanted to be the Godfather, bro, all right? I wanted to be the guy that people come to when they got dramas and they pay respect. Hey, Simmo, how you going, brother? You know what I mean? I need your help with this. No worries, brother. I got you sorted. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I wanted to be. And then so I started get a little bit older, and I'm out roaming the streets, this and that with the boys. And back in those days, you'd just be walking down the street and some lebba will rock up and give you hey, come give me a call, you know, they used to print business cards on, their mobile numbers on a business card and just pass them out. Call me. You know, like, you sell 2, I'll give you 1 free, bro, you know what I mean? You know, I was always out and about, you know, and I was out when everyone else was at home, you know what I mean? And so I'd run into the big boys and they'd say, what are you doing out here in the street? You know what I mean? Come and sit down. What are you doing, boy? You know, this and that. And they'd pay me respect, you know, and they'd speak to me like a man. And I never got that anywhere else. So I started to fall in love with that whole thing. And so I knew the numbers to call when we wanted to get on and that type of stuff. So I guess I started to be the guy that you called if you wanted something. A couple of the boys got pinched in the next neighborhood down from us, and we heard about this. So a couple of the guys got pinched, so their mates went and got automatic rifles and shot up the cop shop, bro. All right. So that's the area I was from, you know. This is back in the early to mid 90s, yeah. So man, it was a wild west down there, brother. Anyway, so yeah, so it was kill or be killed, man. Do you know what I mean? So from about 16 years old, when I started being the man, do you know what I mean? I started doing the wrong thing. So I started breaking my mates' faces, all right? Till about, and this is what happened once. From the age of, on my 21st birthday, a week before my 21st birthday, I was homeless, okay? I spent my 21st birthday with $50 at a stupid friggin' pub, bro, all right? Sleeping on my dad's mate's floor, okay? The coppers told me it's illegal. I'm no longer allowed to enter my premises at my house, all right? My childhood home I grew up all right? I think not long after that, I was sitting in a unit just up the road from my house, smoking weed with these fellas, and I was sitting on a chair, and I'll never forget the day. I was sitting here like I'm sitting here right now, and there was 2 guys there, and I just felt myself pushed aside, right? And this thing spoke out of my mouth, okay? And it introduced itself to these 2 guys. And I remember clear as day that its name to me sounded similar to Persian, okay? And I thought, and I remember seeing the reaction on these guys' faces. They're sitting there and they're like, oh, all right? And from then on, my life went from rubbish to catastrophe, bro, all right? Yeah, it was a demon, bro. Yeah. And I lived with that, not knowing what it was, for the next 20 years. Yeah. Literally living under a curse, man. Yeah. Man, I had all the potential in the world, all right? I was a smart guy, man. I was handsome, do you know what I mean? Charming, do you know what I mean? Fit, you know? So I had the whole world was my oyster. But from that, man, I was doomed, bro, from that day on, hey. And I spent the next 20 years with no hope, brother, all right? No, and not even the dream of ever being able to be cool again or to even to understand what was going on with me, hey. You know, I started drinking when I was 16 and smoking weed, and then it wasn't long until I was taking eckies and dealing eckies and speed and all that type of stuff. So for years and years, I was a transient. I'd move to an area, blow the area up, move to the next area, right? So move in, get a job, meet the dealers, tick up, bash everyone, get pinched, you know, have to move, right? So I'm going up and down the coast, the East Coast, up to the Sunshine Coast, down to almost to Melbourne. Always doing the same thing, right? I never lasted in an area much longer than a year, all right? It just wouldn't work for me. No matter what I did, getting a job, no worries. I'd get a job, but the same thing always kept happening, you know, just self-destruct. There was one time I was dealing, bro, in Sydney for the Lebos, brother, and I was driving around. They had to split the day into 2 6-hour shifts, and I won't go too deep into this, but, you know, I was driving around, I had a pound, bro, and it was just green, right? And I'll bring $8,000, brother, do you know what I mean, a day, all right? But kick the money on, it wasn't mine, give it to the boss, so they paid me a little bit for the day. So I'm getting all this money and I've got all these connections, all this type of stuff, but I couldn't get anywhere. And you know what, the worst, and that's the thing. So in my life, for the next 20 years, it was a steady decline, right? I was living under a curse, but the curse got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I never knew what was going on. Like I said, it took me 38 years for somebody to explain what my situation before God and how it could be remedied, right? I grew up, I told you I went to Catholic primary school and high school, never heard the gospel, all right? I went and bowed my head to friggin' Allah, all right, in the mosque speaking in Arabic. What am I doing here, man? Do you know what I mean? So for the next 20 years, I just wandered around and I was the enemy's plaything, right? I was the devil's puppet, bro, right? And I was just thinking about it before. There was one night I had a backpack full of drugs and cash in the middle of King's Cross, and I lost control of my body, walked into an alley, dumped the bag, and walked out. Like, I couldn't even control my own body, bro. Do you know what I mean? That's one thing that happened. Brother, anyone that's been through this type of stuff, they could tell you stuff. I won't even dignify these stories, brother. Do you know what I mean? Because you're going to go, whatever, bro. You think I'm a lunatic, right? But there's stuff this is a regular occurrence day in, day out. But I never knew what it was. Some days I'm thinking, what is it? Is it mental telepathy or some sort of this and that, whatever? Is it government experiments, all this type of stuff? I don't know, bro. But anyway, so I put up with it and I'm trying to drown the voices out with alcohol and drugs, all that type of stuff. Nothing worked. And then so I ended up on the streets. So 20 years old, that's when I was homeless, but then I sort of drifted around, got a unit or this and that. But it got really bad probably 2010 up until 2018. And that's when I was like on the streets. So I told you I had a pound of weed and offload that in a day, no worries. It's sticks and 50s, brother, all right? And but then I met some friggin' Chinamen who got ounces ice out of the container, all right? And they're like, come on, we give you a tick, you tick off us. I'm like, yeah, no worries. So I got these friggin' ounces of rock on tick, bro, down in Sydney. I can't even go into it, bro. Like, I'm drinking blood with these guys in the middle of the city. Let's cheers, bro. Shaking hands with dudes, bro. And like, stuff's going on. I'm talking to them going, hey, you going, brother? And something's happening below the surface that I'm aware of but not understanding. Do you know what I mean? And there's communication and all this type of stuff, bro. Anyway, so it's crazy. But when I got an ounce of ice off on tick, like direct from China, bro, and that's when I was gone, past the point of no return, right? And just stuff that's when hell's fury was unleashed on me, bro. Do you know what I mean? Because I never paid for it, you know what I mean? So then they got legal rights to me and all this type of stuff. And so I was a literal slave working for the Lebos. I don't know if I got sold or what happened, brother. Do you know what I mean? But I just became a thing, and a puppet of Satan. And then I ended up on the streets, first in Sydney, and then I moved up here and was the Goldie and then Brizzy and all that type of stuff. For the last 2 years before I got saved, I was in Brunswick Street, sleeping in the valley on concrete, man. Solid 2 hours, 2 years solid. Yeah, just a no good friggin' junkie, bro, you know? Just committing crime after crime, in and out of jail, all that type of stuff. Still thinking I was a good person, you know, had morals and honour amongst these, all that crap. Yeah, but I had nothing and no hope of ever having hope ever again, you know? So one of my mates, I ran into him the other day. He's now facing attempted murder because his co-offender set somebody on fire for $150. Okay? Anyway, and this is the thing, bro. I literally spoke to him 2 days ago, all right? So this is the thing. My mum taught me this. I remember it to this day. Before my first day of school, my mum pulled me aside and said, Simon, you're going to school now. I want you to remember that she told me this and that, But the thing that stuck out to me, she goes, if somebody lends you something and they want to keep it or not give it back, she goes, don't let it bother you. Maybe they need it more than you or something like that. But there's a scripture that says when you lend, don't expect to have it back, you know? And when I came to Jesus and I started reading it, I came across that and I was like, whoa, I've been living by that my whole life. And you know what? That actually literally saved my life so many times, because I could do, like, a deal could go bad and somebody could get the better of me and like $1,500 or something like that, or even $6,000, bro. Like one time somebody got me for $6,000 and I was like, do you know what I mean? No big deal. It's just cash. I can get it again. But then I've heard some horror stories over $50, man. For $1,500, I said it the other day. I know boys back in the day, for $1,500, they'll do bad stuff to you, then they'll do it to your family, bro. Do you know what I mean? But I was never that way inclined, right? So I could always just let it go. And that, you know, that's God's word working on me when I wasn't even aware of it. I always decided I never wanted to go putrid, right? I always wanted to have honor. Like I said, I wanted to be the godfather. I wanted to be the guy people come when they were in drama, and Simmo can help sort it out. You know what I mean? And I would, bro. I was that reckless and that much of a psycho that I love violence, brother. I loved it. And I got tattoos and this and that all over me, and scars, bro, like you wouldn't believe. Because every day, and I got it tattooed across my chest, it says hard to kill. And every day I would test it, you know, and I'd get out of it every day. And every morning I'd wake up and think to myself, I got no drugs, I got no cash, you know, I got no food, I got no nothing. But, you know, in a couple of hours I'll do this and that. And then this time again tomorrow I'll be sitting here going, I can't believe that just happened, you know. When nobody in the history of humanity should have been able to walk away from what I just walked away from last night. So I knew there was something out there, a God, and I always wanted to be on his side. And I hated the devil, bro, because I knew he was behind. I'd seen him at work and I'd seen his sinister ways. Like when you're a part of the underbelly, you see stuff that a lot of people aren't ever privy to, right? And you see, and that's why these days I can go and talk to fellas on the street and I can say, you know, I can ask them about God, you know, is God real? And they're like, don't talk to me about God, you know, this and that. I got my understanding. But I can get to them because I can say to them, I know you know Satan's real, bro. And they'll say, yeah. And then that's my in. Bro, I'll tell you something, God's realer than him, you know? Because you see Satan at work all the time. So I always like to pay respect to God, but I didn't know how to get there or any of that type of stuff. Like I said, I never heard the gospel. I got this tattooed on my arm here, on my shoulder. It says one something, all right? And I discovered that matter. So we're talking about 20 years of like demonic oppression, brother, like literally, right? And living under a curse and having active people, you know, to come and get you. But they could never get me, eh? And I discovered that if you just find something, if you find the light, if you find one good thing, and I got it tattooed on me that said one something. And it's that one something, that one bit of good or that one bit of light that can drag you through. All your whole life can be horrible and putrid and absolutely horrific, but if you find that one good thing that it can drag you through, right? And for instance, I'd go on a bender, an ice bender for 3-4 days, and then Like I had no house, no nothing, no family, no one to love me, nothing. But then so I'd be exhausted and I'd be walking around finding somewhere peaceful to sleep, and then I'd go through a rubbish bin, because when you slept on concrete, you know the difference between sleeping on cold concrete's unforgiving, right? There's no give in it, and it doesn't just make you cold, it sucks the strength and the warmth from you. So before I'd lay down, after 3 days on the go, I'd go and find a cardboard box in a recycling bin, and I'd lay it down. So I'd lay the cardboard box down, and I'd take my shoes off, and I'd put them behind on the thing as my pillow. And it was a sort of a personal joke between me and God, right? And I'd sit down and I'd go, thank you, God. And I'd laugh to myself. And maybe he was laughing with me, because I'd say, thank you for this luxurious place you've given me to, kick back. I've got city views, this and that, fresh breeze, blah, blah. And I'd learned to be thankful for the fact that I have a cardboard box and a blanket, do you know what I mean? And he did hear me, bro, eh? And that's the thing with God, man. He's so friggin' awesome. And I even said it the other day, I can't hate my life and I can't regret my life, because all the horror that I went through for 20 years, it now makes me the man I am today. And it's a man that's in love with Jesus, brother, and that's got a message of hope. Do you know what I mean? And a testimony that says, with the blood of Jesus, you can overcome anything in your life. You know what I mean? No matter how bad it is. Yeah. I'll tell you this. So the last little crime spree I did before I went to jail, I did a couple of robberies with violence, and I stole a car, and I'd already been out on bail for possession and assaulting police and all this type of stuff. And I just lost it and given up. So I was just being reckless, walking in and just clearing out stores and all this type of stuff. And they had me on CCTV, all that type of stuff. Anyway, so I ended up just doing some reckless jobs anyway. And they arrested me, and I spent a couple of months on remand. So it was 3 months I spent in jail, and I didn't have any contact with the outside world or anything like that. And then all of a sudden one morning they called me up, Kiani, get redressed, you're going to court. I'm like, what am I going to court for? I didn't have any contact with my solicitors or anything. So it took me to court, and then I waited all day in the holding cells in the district court, because it was robbery, with violence. At the end of the day, they call me up to the courtroom and they say, so my barrister comes and goes, listen, I need you to plead guilty to this so I can, and I'm like, bro, I'm not pleading guilty to anything, I'm facing years, bro, And he goes, just do it, and then I can bail you to this address, and then we can work it out from there. I'm like, sweet as no worries. And so I plead guilty for my breaches of bail, so then they can release me on bail again. So on a Friday afternoon, I get released on bail with a pair of shorts, a t-shirt, and $10 for a bus fare or train fare, not knowing where I'm going. So the first thing I did, I walk out of the courthouse being on remand for 3 months, and I walk out, I pick up a cigarette butt, go to the store, get some rolly papers, roll of smoke, go to the bottle, buy a $4 bottle of wine. Next thing I remember, I'm waking up in Ipswich. All right, I've lost all my bail papers, so I don't know my bail address or anything like this, and I'm like, oh man. So this is on a Saturday, so I spent the Saturday stuffing around in Ipswich. And this is the thing, it would have been better for me to stay in jail and face my stuff than to be released and then, re-offend and get sent back, and then they're like, we're not going to show you leniency, mate. You know what I mean? Too many chances. And this is the enemy's plan, right? Anyway, so I spent a day in Ipswich just until I realised it's not a place for the homeless, no facilities and all that type of stuff. So I'll go back to what I knew, which is the valley. So I hopped on a train, and I caught a train in there, no bus fare or anything, no ticket. So I get off at the valley and I walk. I got out of South Brisbane because I knew that there'd probably be ticket inspectors or whatever. So I'm walking towards the valley, and I walk through this tunnel coming through to one of the parks. And I'll never forget this. So I walk out there and I see these people sitting on beanbags and that. And they say, come on, brother, come and sit down. I said, oh, what are you doing? And they go, what are you up to, And I'm like, oh, nothing much. Oh, no, I go, well, I just got out on bail. And she goes, oh, well, you got somewhere to go? And I said, no, I got nothing, I don't know what I'm doing. And she looked at me and she goes, and she was sitting on the ground, she goes, brother, I've never done this before, but I'm going to give you $50. And she goes, and I'm not giving it to you from my money, I'm giving it to you from the church's money. And I was like, this is okay, cool. And the first thing I'm thinking is, man, that's money for a shot, all right? So she gives me the $50. And I did, I went and spent it on a shot, all right? But here's the thing. I never forgot that chick. And she was there every Sunday for months and months, just making a spot. That was her ministry, to make a spot for the homeless in the valley and to come and you know, where they could be fed and loved and that type of stuff. And so that was my first experience of a Christian putting their money where their mouth is, basically their faith, bro, you know? And so I kept going back there. And just, even if it was just to drop in and say hello, and I was, yeah, how you going? Her name is Margarita, yeah? And I still got a number. And I called her a while back later. This is probably the story for another time. But she knows how well I'm doing now, you know? And that's a good thing. For years and years, I was more up to the last couple of years, I had a prayer that I used to say to God. So I didn't understand Jesus or what was coming or any of that, but I'd heard about the Battle of Armageddon and all that type of stuff. So I started to ask a few more questions, right? So growing up as a Roman Catholic with a mother, you know, and that was my experience of religion and what it meant to worship God. And I still know the liturgy of the Catholic Mass off by heart, man, the responses and all that type of stuff. And when I was on the streets, I'd sneak into a church sometimes and I'd stand there and just listen to the word and sing the hymns, and I'd cry sometimes, bro. Do you know what I mean? And but I never, like I said, I never had that connection. I never heard the gospel, right? So in all the masses I went to, baptism, I was baptized at 9 years old on my school lunch break, bro. Confirmed, all right? Primary school, high school, I never had the gospel clearly explained that I could remember, bro. All right? That Jesus, the Son of God, came to earth in human form, lived the perfect life, and died in our place. Because we all have a debt that needs to be paid, bro. All right? And in order for that debt to be paid and us escape the penalty, do you know what? For the payment, you know, the repercussions, he died and paid the bill for us, bro. Okay? That's the gospel, right? Is it? I never heard that. Okay? I'm telling you, 38 years, brother, I've never heard it. All right? No worries about growing up and going to Catholic school and going to Catholic high school. I never heard it from anyone, bro. All right? You want to hear this? And this isn't a dig at the Catholic Church. I've got brothers and sisters. I love them. I love them. And I even had some nuns in a convent praying for me, bro, while I was on the streets. One of the old men in the neighborhood. You want to hear that? A beautiful story. One day I'd been to Anala, blew up the whole area, bro, all right? I came back to the valley, all the plans fell through, this and that, la-da-da. So I got all my crap in. We're supposed to get a this and that, go everywhere, blah, 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 all fell through. I'm just exhausted. So in the middle of the valley, I sat down with my bags and just laid on the concrete. And this old man comes up to me and goes, hey, what are you doing laying down here for? And I said to him, oh, sorry, bro, I'll move out. And I thought he was saying get out of the way to the front of my house. And he goes, you can't sleep there. And I'm like, sorry, bro, I'll move. And he goes, no. If you need somewhere to sleep, you can sleep on my couch. All right? This guy's name's Franco. All right? And he's a Catholic brother. All right? Bro, this guy was Jesus to me. All right? He said, come and sleep on my couch. I said, bro, you don't want me sleeping on your couch, bro. All right? I said, you can do me a favor and hold my bags for me, and I'll come back in a couple of days. No worries. So I used to drop in on him, and we used to say the Our Father and the Hail Mary, all that type of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Pray with each other. You know what I mean? He'd feed me, bro. Do you know what I mean? I'd even have a shower. You know, he once lent me a suit. Okay? Anyway, so I love Catholics, bro. All right? It's just that I never heard the gospel. So I started asking questions, and I'm sitting up. There's a homeless hostel sitting just above the valley, Spring Hill, and there's a few cathedrals and that. And I kept seeing this. So growing up in the Catholic Church, you see the Jesus on the cross all the time, right? But in these other churches, I'm seeing the cross without Jesus on it. And I go, And I was asking the boys, I'm like, oi, why isn't Jesus on the cross? And they're like, I don't know. And I remember asking the taxi driver, oi, bro, why there's no Jesus on that cross? I don't know, bro. So this and that. So I'm asking questions, and no one could answer it for me. And then, like I told you, I had this running prayer and a conversation. It was pretty one-sided. Like, it was me just sitting there going, oh, God, you know. I hated the devil, man, and what he'd done to my life. And I'd seen the putrid crap he's done, right? I'd still tried to have honor, even though I was a crim and a junkie and a loser, bro. Do you know what I mean? And I still tried to do the right thing, brother, you know? And I hated Satan and all he stood for. I hated lies. I hated evil, bro, you know? And I wanted to do good. And then so one day, like I said, I used to go to the cathedrals, this and that. And there's one in the city. And I went in there, and I went a couple of times, big cathedral, and I went in there, and I sat through one of the masses, and then afterwards they got together for tea and coffee. I was like, okay, not a Catholic cathedral either, and so I was there, and literally a priest in robes is there, or a deacon or whatever. And I walk up to him, and no, I had this conversation with God. I'm like, I hate the devil, and I want him to burn, bro. And I'm like, do me this one honor. I don't care what comes next. I'm like, in the battle of Armageddon, let me be on the front line so I can at least get some payback. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I didn't understand. Like, if I die, then I die. Your will be done, but let me get back at this. Do you know what I mean? And that was my prayer, right? So I go to this cathedral one night and sit through the mass, beautiful singing, this and that. And then I go to this guy wearing priestly robes, and I say to him, hey, buddy, listen, can I talk? I said, hey, brother, can I speak to you? He goes, yeah. And I said, listen, I hate the devil and what he stands for, right? And I said, tell me how I can get back at him. How can I fight, bro? How can I be on God's side? And he goes to me, don't worry about it. The fight's already won. And he left it at that. All right? And to me, this is the thing. You can't tell me that the fight's won when I'm living my life. Do you get what I mean? All right? I get it. I get it now that the fight's won. We just got to play out the battle, right? You can't tell a friggin' junkie, do you know what I mean, who's been tormented for 20 years, who's living on the streets, right? Facing jail time, facing death if the right guys find him, a painful, torturous death, bro. You can't tell me the battle's already won. So I went, you know what? I had enough of you, bro, and I walked out, okay? And I said, I don't want none of what you've got. I don't want it, all right? But then a couple of nights later, I'll never forget this, and this is how God will work no matter what. I was like one of the homeless shelters. We were out on the street, and I think there was 3 of us there, and we were crossing the road. As we were crossing the road, my mate goes to me. He asked me who do I think is the biggest, best gangster of all time? Knowing, and in context, it's like the gangster was the who you want it to be, right? That's the most noble of us. You know, if you're a gangster, bro. You got a code of ethics. You never snitch, you never dog. You know, you stand up for your boys. You lay your life down for your brothers if you need to, all that type of stuff. And I thought about it, and I'm like, I don't know, one of the Corleones, right? And then he says to me, you know, I heard it was, some guy told me the other day it was Jesus. And I say again, that hit me in my gut. And it was the most profound sense of, yes. Do you know what I mean? Jesus was the greatest. And it hit me, and I couldn't shake that feeling for a couple of days, And I walked around and I didn't understand it at all, right? But this is the thing. I went to a priest in a cathedral, and I asked him, how do I get right with God? And he couldn't tell me. All right? And then I'm walking across the road with a couple of junkies, and I'm a junkie. All right? And this question is hanging in the air, and my immortal soul rests on the answer, bro, and me understanding it. So God gets to work through some other dude who ministers to a homeless guy, who talks to my homeless mate, who then talks to me, and the Spirit of God partners with that, convicts me. Do you know what I mean? I'm 38 years. And that's just, I didn't even hear the gospel yet then, bro. All right? And then a few nights later, or maybe a week or so later, I went back to that. And I remember I was looking for Jesus on the cross. I couldn't find him on the crosses of any of these churches. And I go to this cathedral, and I'm blind, and I find this big stone carving of Jesus on the cross, and I'm off my face, man, and it's about 3-4 meters up. So I climb up and I put my hands on his feet and I'm like, brother, it's time for you to get off that grass. I'm like, it's time for me to get up there. And I take the boys to the city and I say, that's where I called out to God and to Jesus, and he answered me, And it wasn't long after that one of my brothers, Bobby Mearns, who runs Fishers of Men Ministries, he rocked up in a van one day and I hopped in and he took me to his house and that's where I heard the gospel, clearly. One of the boys was walking along and he goes, you want to come for a feed? And I said, yeah, sure, no worries, where are we going? And he goes, we're going to Fishers of Men. So all right. So Bobby rocks up, picks us up in a van and we go to his house. And this is a residential house, bro, all right? And we walk in and he puts on for 15 years he was putting on meals out of his house twice a week for guys living on the streets, And I walk in there and I'm hazy because, off my guts. I've been off my guts for 20 years, bro, And he says, you know what? If you want to ever change your life, you give me a call, Go talk to my wife about what we do here. And she asked me a few questions. Do I believe in God? This type of stuff. I said, yeah, of course I believe in God. I see the devil at work every day, I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I'd been searching for something to do, man. I didn't have a way out of my life, And I thought maybe rehab's the place to be, but I couldn't find a rehab. 3 months waiting, all that type of stuff. So I just gave up. But Bobby says, if you want a spot, you give me a call tomorrow and we'll talk about it. So the bus back to the city, I was thinking about it and I thought, the worst that could happen, I spent 6 months learning the Bible, and I that appealed to me because I'd always wanted to be with God and understand God more and that, but I'd never had the opportunity. And I thought maybe I'll get off my, get clean and sober, get my license back and all that type of stuff, do something. So I got off at the city and I decided, I'm going to do this. So I went and grabbed my street swag and I had a stash with some cans of food and I put my swag out, and I used to sleep on the church grounds because I could get a little bit of peace and quiet there. And so I rolled out my swag and I went to sleep, and I slept the best sleep I had in ages, And I woke up and I had court the next day actually, and I woke up I think about 5. Before I went to bed, I remember I cracked a can of cold baked beans and I drank them out of the can, and I had a sleep. And I woke up in the morning and I was like, and I said to myself, this is the first day of the rest of my life, And I've never really thought about how profound this morning actually was, because I said to myself, this is the first day of the rest of my life. So I rolled up my swag and I put it there, and I put all my cans of food there, and I left my blanket and my spare change of clothes and all that type of stuff, and I said, I hope, God, you can bless the next man that comes across this, and it's as much to me as it was, as much to them as it was to me. And it took me a couple of years to realize what was going on there, because I didn't leave any reserves to go back to. Do you know what I mean? I could have stashed the swag and said, if it doesn't work out, I can always come back to it. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't. And that's God's grace, brother, and the Spirit at work in me. You know what I mean? Preparing me to hear this good news that I've never heard for 38 years, And so I went to, it's a bit of a story, went to court, didn't have to appear, right? They're like, it's all good, your judicial is going to take care of it. I'm like, okay. Go to the Salvation Army officer and I said, can I use your mobile? And he goes, what do you want to use it for? And he said, I want to call rehab. And he goes, no worries, mate, you go for gold. So he said to me, I'll come and get you now. And he said, but meet me at this spot. And it was one of the homeless shelters. And I had this sense of dread in me that something really bad could happen, right? And I'd learned to trust that gut feeling. It saved my life many times, But I'm like, can you meet me somewhere else? And he goes, I don't really know the city all that well, meet me there. So I'm like, okay. And I had money in my pocket to buy a bottle of wine or something like that, but I didn't do it. But then when I got to this spot, everyone was looking at me weird, different. And there was something in them that was angry. Do you know what I mean? And for a little bit, I was never scared, but I was a little bit scared that day because I was like, this could pop off at any second, and I didn't want it to. Do you know what I mean? Back in the day, I didn't care, bro. If you want to burn the world, I'll light the match, bro, and I'll keep you there until we both burn. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, so I was sitting there and I was wary. People were looking at me different and they were angry and this and that. Where are you going, Simmo? This and that. So I'm like, all right. Anyway, so he rocks up, picks me up. He takes me to his house, and he's got a couple of houses where he takes the boys from the street and disciples them. So the first night there, like I said, we open the scriptures and I'm reading this and I'm like, I know this. Do you know what I mean? I was like, this is familiar to me, yeah. But then the next day we went to a place called the Healing Rooms, where I went every Friday for the next year and a half easy, you know, for prayer, man, because we all need prayer. And especially the life that you come from, brother, you know, you need to clean house, you really do. But the first visit I had there, a guy comes in and he tells me, I sit down in the room with him and he says, and he starts telling me the parable of the Prodigal Son, right? And I'd never heard the gospel. And he explains to me that we're all the son that leaves home and we take what the Father's given us and we waste it, bro. And we waste it in the worst possible way. And each of us, no matter what we're doing, we all end up in a state where we're looking at the pig food in the mud, thinking, oh, should I eat that crap from the floor? And if we come to our senses and say, there's something better waiting for me at my Father's house, even if I go back there, I can be a servant, you know, because my Father's gracious. He's going to at least have pity on me, be a servant. And the story is that when the Father sees the Son, he runs. And this guy's telling me this story, and he starts crying, man. And I start crying. And I've never heard this before, right? And this guy believes it in his heart so much and understands the love and compassion of God that, you know, it moved me. And he says, you know, you're the boy, and the Father's waiting for you to come home. I said, okay. And I never heard this like this before. To come to the Father, you got to go through Jesus. Do you know what I mean? And it's so Jesus says, you know, there's only one way to the Father, and that's through me. You know. And he said, but the thing is, you got to put your past away, and you got to leave it. You got to forget it, and you can't go back to it. You know. And I'd already decided. Thanks to God, you know, thanks be to God, I'd left my swag and I'd left the food and I'd left my safety net. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all in, because I'd had this saying, if anything's worth doing, it's worth overdoing, right? And I'd never understood prayer. I'd never heard about what it meant to follow Jesus. This guy just said, your Father loves you. He wants you to come home, but to get there, you've got to come through Jesus. So I said, all right, if this is the way, then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it even if I don't understand it. And there's a scripture that I love, is Proverbs 3:5-6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't lean on your own understanding. It says, in all your ways acknowledge him and he'll make your path straight. And that's the scripture I really stood on to start with. So straight up from the first time I heard it, and he said, this is what it means to follow Jesus. Do you want to follow Jesus? And I said, yes. And that's when I decided, brother, that I'm going to consciously, from now on, follow Jesus, even if I don't understand it. But I will tell you this, 20 years, bro, I've been what I now know to be demonically possessed, brother, all right? You know, I'd put cigarette butts out on myself, I cut my face, see this and that, you know, holding blowtorches to my body, all this type of stuff. And like I said, I'll break a man twice my size, no worries, you know what I mean? And I'll get addicted to that feeling. And this is because I was the enemy's plaything. And he delighted in my torment. And it was day in, day out, and there was no escape from it because it all happened in here. And I couldn't work out what it was. He delighted in my self-destruction and my torture and my pain. And he also delighted in me inflicting pain and inflicting destruction, all right, out in the world. And when I first got into the house, I used to have this thing. So I'd look into people's eyes sometimes, and stuff used to happen, right, in my head. And when I was in this discipleship house, I'd look into Bobby's eyes and his wife as well. And these are very godly people, right, who've devoted their lives to spreading the good news and to being Jesus to people, bro. Like, they're taking degenerates from the street and putting them under me, a degenerate from the street. Do you know what I mean? And giving them a roof and saying, walk him into my house and be family, you know? And one day, I'll never forget it, I looked at his I'm early on, and I used to avoid looking people in the eye, because I look into her eyes and something hissed in my head. So talking, and it was putrid crap, like sexual or homosexual, all this type of like anything disgusting and perverse, because it didn't want me around these people. So what it would do or they would do is hiss this profound, disgusting crap in my head. And what I normally would do is leave and get on. Do you know what I mean? Or drown my head with music, blah, 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 just try and drown the... But anyway, so instead of doing that, I told you I'm going to lean not on my own understanding. All right? So I go to her one day and I said, listen, Brenwyn, every time I look you in the eye, something happens in my head and it's gross and it's disturbing and I don't know what it is. And I said, there's something sinister behind it. And she said to me, you know what? That sounds spiritual, Simmo. And I said, you know what? And I remember the feeling of relief when I said that to her, because it seems like somebody didn't say, it's just residual schizophrenia. Have some friggin' pills, bro. I knew it wasn't that, right? 20 years, someone's telling me I got residual schizophrenia. I knew it wasn't that. It had personality and it was sinister, bro. All right? And I used to feel it during the day, sifting through things and and talking to other things, and other stuff would come and visit, and this is all going on in my head, bro. Anyway, so I tell her this, and she goes, it does sound spiritual for me. And then she organised for me to have a session of deliverance done, all right? And I trust this guy to this day. I still hang around with him. Call him Saint Nick. He's a big, friggin' tall, bloody ex-Viking or something from the Netherlands or whatever. Excellent man, on fire for Jesus, and unashamedly, right? But anyway, so we sat down, we just organised, I spoke to him, and he organised to come around and speak to me one day. And we sat down, and we just sat down in the backyard, and we talked about some stuff, and we prayed together, me, him, and another guy, and stuff would come to them, and they'd say, listen, we need to be renouncing this and renouncing that, and da-da-da. And so I did. I worked through some stuff, and we prayed. It wouldn't have taken more than 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. And I was like, okay, that's good. And then I walked to my bedroom, up into my bedroom, and I shared it with another guy. And I'll never forget this day. Remember this, for 20 years, bro, I had this going on in my head and there was no escaping it, because it was inside. Even when I was completely blind, or, do you know what I mean? There was no escaping this thing. And I walked up to my bedroom after this deliverance session, prayer, and it wasn't anything over the top or anything. I didn't manifest or anything like that. I just went up there and I walked into my bedroom, and these things said to me, we'll never bother you again. And I felt them leave. All right? And then I got down on my knees and I started weeping, bro. Eh? And that's when I knew, of course I knew it was real, but this was do you know what I mean?
It's good to see that you were delivered from those things. How has Jesus changed your life since then? How have you been serving, and what's your life look like now?
So I spent nearly 2 years in Fishers and Men Ministry. So I went through like what they call first stage, and I guess I became one of the leaders in the house. I never dreamed. I learned to have a passion and a drive to share what I've been blessed with. Let me put it to you this way, right? So God has given me salvation, right? And I think of it like this. So He's given me, a kid, this bag of lollies that's got an endless supply, right? Infinite supply of bag of lollies. And He goes, here you go, Simmo, this is your bag of lollies. Now what do? Do I take that bag of lollies that has no end, and do I take it upstairs and hide it under my bed and just pick out at it myself? Or do I go out into the neighbourhood with this bag of lollies that can never run out, and do I share it with all the other kids? Do you know what I mean? And that's how I see our salvation. We've been given something that has eternal blessings, you know? And for me to keep that to myself it's even beyond selfish, bro. I feel a conviction, and I know you do too, bro, to share what we've been given. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing. None of us were born holy, bro. Do you know what I mean? I don't care if you've never been a drug addict or a whatever. Do you know what I mean? Or a criminal, whatever, bro. But none of us were born whole, and we all need Jesus, right? I learned to love sharing my faith. So I started going out on the streets, and then even leading teams out and sharing the gospel, that type of stuff. And then I got a job at my church, being the groundsman. This guy, ex-junkie, trying to get right. And then now I'm facing all these charges, 33 charges, like 2 robberies with the violence, assault police, breaches of bail, possessions, all this type of stuff, still on bail. And they say, and they've got a job opening for being the groundsman. So they give me the job as the groundman, they give me the keys to every lock in the house, they give me, the alarm codes to all the buildings, all that type of stuff, and they trusted me, man. And they said, if you wanna buy something for the fuel or whatever, just come and get the credit card and we'll give it to you, and you go do what you need to do, just bring the receipt. And that really meant a lot to me, man, because no one ever trusted me before, and these guys, they said, here's the keys, here's the codes, and here's the cash, and they never asked me nothing, and they trusted me, so I really wanted to honour that trust. And so I spent 3.5 years as the groundsman, and then during that time they took me on as an intern, just learning about discipleship and leadership. And also I really felt a calling after I was baptised for it to be a full-time thing, and I knew I needed to study and to devote the rest of my life to doing God's work. So yeah, I started Bible college as well, like I said. So I spent 3 years probably studying and just working with the church and volunteering, man. And getting to know the family. And then I met my wife. I waited, bro, and I saw a lot of guys doing stupid crap, They get lonely, they start sleeping with meeting girls, sleeping with them, or compromising in other ways, do you know what I mean? Alcohol or whatever it is, and I don't care what it is and what you compromise on, it always leads back to the same friggin' spot, It's a dog going back to his vomit, and a pig, after they're clean, returning to the mud. And I never wanted to be that guy. And the same way my church said, here's the keys, here's the cash, and here's the codes, we're going to trust you with this. I wanted to honour that trust, right? And it's the same thing with God. He said, I've delivered you from something you could never imagine being delivered from, all right? What am I going to do? When I get back on my feet, I'm going to say it's all right for me to just not give you my whole heart. So I did. I tried my best to not be a disappointment to my king. So I waited a couple of years, 3 years or so, 4 years, and I met my wife now. So I've been married 6 months now. I've got a baby on the way, our first child together. And you know what the beautiful thing is? My wife, her name's Susan, she's 41 years old, and I'm her first kiss. And this woman loves Jesus more than she loves me. And that's what I need. And she knows that I got to love God more than I love her. But in doing so, brother, I'm going to be the best man I can be for her. If I love Jesus with my whole heart, I can love her with my whole heart, and I can be the best father I can be. Yeah. And now I'm a man of God, bro, that people can depend on, and they can come to me like I wanted to be the godfather, the criminal before. Now I'm the godfather, bro, in a good way. Do you know what I mean? Because they can come to me like, okay, Simmo, brother, and Christians are the good mafia, bro. Do you know? we got each other's back. When Christianity done right, it's the best thing. The best way that God could bless this planet is his family of believers being his body and acting out his will on earth. And he says to us to go share what I've given you. I've given you freedom, and I want you to share it with creation. And I've given you the keys to the kingdom, and that's through my son. And I've given you salvation. Do you know what I mean? That's good news, that anybody that comes to my son in faith will be redeemed, You're redeemed, then you're saved, You come to your king in faith and you say, I bow before you, my Lord, Do with me as you will. And he says, it took long enough, mate. You know what I mean? Come here, join the family. Yeah. I was sharing, we took, with Fishers and Men, we took some of the, so I was taking teams out, right? And we take some food with us and give it out to the guys and then pray for people if they want it or anything. And I remember I walked up to this was during COVID as well. And I walked up to this private hotel. There was this big guy sitting out the front, right? And I walked up and I saw he had 666 tattooed on his hand. And I went, "Oi, what are you doing, brother?" And he goes, "Oh, nothing much, man, this and that." Just started, and I've always been bold and not scared of nobody or none of that. So I go, "Well, what's that on your hand, you idiot?" You know what I mean? And he goes, "Oh, man, I got it when I was young and stupid, this and that, da-da-da." And I go, "All right, yeah, no worries." And I said, that's friggin', that's foolishness or whatever I said to him. He goes, "Yeah, I know. one of the guys, one of my mentors who I really respect, he said, one of the ways you can a good tool for evangelism is to ask people, can I pray for you specifically? So then you say, next time we meet, you can tell me how it went, right? I've never been a big faith guy with the healings and this and that. Like, I'm not one of those guys that walk up and go, can I pray for you? Can I pray for your healing? No, I'm not that. But anyway, so this guy was sitting here, 666 tattooed on him. I'm like, one of the people I respect is like, this is a good tool for evangelism. And I'm like, oh, what are you up to, bro? And he goes, yeah, nothing much. And I go, is there anything I can pray for you about? And then I said, just, you know why? Because the next time I see you, I want to see if your prayers get answered. And he goes, well, I've got a broken foot. You can pray for that. And I'm like, oh, man, why do I have to pray for a broken foot? So I'm like, all right. So I'm like, all right, bro, Lord Jesus, can you pray for my bro here, his broken foot, da-da-da. And nothing happens, all right? So I walk away. Thank you, Jesus, I've done what you asked me to. But then, I think it was 2 weeks later, I came back and I was walking around the same spot and I was coming under a bridge actually in Brisbane Central. And there was a guy and I was walking with a crate of food and a guy calls out, oi, what are you up to, this and that? And I turn around and there was a big boy and I looked at him and go, oh, I remember thinking, that's a big fella. And he goes, oh, what do you got for dinner tonight? And I go, oh, chicken or whatever. And he goes, and I go, oh, I remember you, bro. And he goes, yeah. And I go, you got 666 tattooed on your hand, eh? And he goes, yeah. And I go, brother, did you? And I go, did the prayer work? And he goes, well, I'm walking, aren't I? So yeah, that's the first experience I really had with someone being healed, man, through prayer. Like this guy's foot was big, man, and broken and all that. And 2 weeks later, he's walking around and I got to ask him as well, so I got answered that prayer, yeah.
So, thank you again for sharing your testimony with everyone. Last thing to do is just to pray for everyone who's been watching.
Okay. Yeah, Jesus, I love you so much. I love you. I love that you loved me when I was less than nothing. And I love that you love all of us. And I love that you want none of us to perish. And I love that you've taken every step that you could to reconcile us back to you. So that we could have something when we had nothing. But you know what? You don't force us to do anything, eh? So you know what my prayer is today? It will be that. You know what my prayer is today? My prayer is today that somebody that has never heard the gospel has heard it today. And because of that, they will hear how good you are, Lord, my Lord, my Lord, my Lord King Jesus. And they will say, even if I don't understand it, I'm going to decide to follow you. And I know, Lord Jesus, that you're not just going to bless that, you're going to redeem them. And you know what? You who deserve all honor and all glory will honor that decision, A nothing and a nobody that's facing destruction, warranted destruction can come to you in faith and you can redeem them. I thank you, Jesus, for all the work you've done in my life and the lives of my brothers and my sisters. I thank you for the future you've given me and the hope that can never be disappointed. Man, I pray that you hearing my voice, anyone hearing my voice will have a boldness and will be encouraged to step out in faith and to share their faith. And that's the thing, it's not a game, man. It's not a game out there. The world is facing destruction. Man, bro, pays due, man. Debts have got to get settled, bro, eh? And like I said, no one was born holy, bro. And it's not a game, eh? But the thing is, to get out of that, you don't got to pay nothing because Jesus has paid it. And I pray somebody hears this right now and gets right with God, because this might be your last chance, eh? Before it's all over and there's no coming back. That's what I was facing. That's what you were facing, brother. That's what we're all facing, bro. So I pray somebody, if only one person turns to Jesus because of my words. Do you know what I mean? They overcome the enemy because of the word of my testimony and the blood of the Lamb. Then, you know what? Then my whole life's already been worthwhile. All right? So I'll pray at least one, my Lord, will turn to you as a result of what we've been doing here this afternoon. I'll pray that in your mighty name, Jesus.